think we are. Let me double check. Yeah, we are. We are. Okay. So Oren Weisfeld is joining me today in the post-game show. The Raptors beat the Dallas Mavericks 116-93. And finally, something to smile about. After the first half, things still look pretty shifty there on a lot of different fronts. But the second half seems to kind of turn the tide for not just one, not for Siakam, but for a bunch of guys just had better showings in the first half, in the second half than the first. Like at the highest level, man, what's the difference between the two halves that you noticed?
Uh, I guess I would just say like things around the fringes, right? Like cleaning up turnovers, transition defense, transition offense, making open threes. Like it was just a mixture of little things that they cleaned up. Like this whole season, the Raptors have been uncharacteristically sloppy, and that second half was easily their best half, and it was their least sloppy half. So I guess that's I guess the biggest difference. And also like offensively, when Pascal is going, everyone is just it's so much easier for everyone because when he's making shots, it's really hard to defend the team, right?
And Lowry too, I find like I think if he's having a solid game, and nobody's expecting him to drop 30, obviously, but I'm just saying if he has a half decent game where he's taking care of the ball, he's not settling for jumpers, he's in the game. Like a lot of the times, Lowry kind of drifts in and out of games. I find almost like you won't even feel him on the court for like 4 or 5 minutes, and then you realize he's playing or because he's off the ball or whatever. But if he's in the game and engaged and not giving up too much defensively, doing his driving kicks, doing his little once in a while threes. He's like a steady thread that just carries the entire team and allows everybody else to kind of hang off of him. He's this stabilizing force that allows everybody else to kind of up their game.
For sure, yeah. I mean, he's their leader, and this season, other than the first 2, 3 games when he was good, he really kind of fell off. And I know like Raptors fans don't really like to call out Lowry's stuff when he's not that good because he's obviously everyone's favorite. But if we're being honest, he hasn't been that good these past 8 games. And this was to me by far his best game of the season. It was just kind of vintage Lowry, and he did everything. He almost had a triple double, you know, plus 50 and
Let's talk about Siakam a little bit because he's the guy who just had a tale of two halves, man. Like first up, started off very much the way he started off the season. Settling, by far the worst shot he took today was like in transition three with like no rebounder underneath there from the left wing. And even Jack was like, oh my God, that's just not a good shot. He's much better catching the ball than he is doing that. What, like, it's such an obviously a bad shot that you kind of feel surprised that he continues to take them as much as he does. Like you expect him to kind of be like, oh, okay, the season started off really poorly. I found myself. Now I know what to do. But you still see him kind of drift off into some shot selection that at best is suspect.
yeah. I agree that in general his shot selection that game, especially the first half, was suspect. That specific three, like I don't really have a problem with him taking wide open threes. So that specific one I can't get mad at. Like if the three is open, the Raptors system wants you to take it no matter who you are on the court. And like he's a good 3-point shooter. He's just not shooting it well right now, which is like why I understand the frustration, and like maybe he should dumb down those shots a little bit until he kind of gets back in rhythm. But if he's wide open, I don't really mind it. But beginning of the game was when I had more of like a problem with his shot selection because settling for jumpers when his primary defenders were slow big men. Like if Kristaps Porzingis is on him, like he did this once at the in the fourth quarter where like Porzingis got switched on to him and then he like dribbled it out and called for a clear out. And then he picked up like a foul call on Kristaps because Kristaps can't guard him in space. And that was just like my problem in the first half is I know the Raptors don't really like to go into ISO mode that much. Like they like the offense to be free flowing, but if Pascal has a slow big man on him and he's not found his rhythm yet, like get to the free throw line, like take that guy and like drive. And so
And
that's the frustrating part.
and don't play with your back to the basket against a big man like Porzingis, because you can totally take him in face-up situations like he did much more like later on in the game. But early on, you found him like even on a switch when he had Porzingis on him, he sort of his drives were against his body. They weren't in a face-up situation because that totally favors Porzingis because he doesn't have to move. He literally has to just go like this and just kind of see what Pascal's doing. But in a face-up situation, it's an entirely different. And Porzingis is not a great defender. Like he's not really anybody that should be giving you trouble, especially a guy like Siakam who's athletic, who's faster, who's quicker, who's all these things. Yeah, he's not bigger, but he really should have Porzingis at his mercy on most possessions.
Especially considering he's coming off like an injury that held him out for so many months, and this is his second game back. I expected him at the beginning of the game when I realized he was going to be Pascal's defender. I expected Pascal to, okay, like this guy is just coming back from injury. Like he's already a slow defender. I'm going to go at him and like make his life difficult. And they just did not make that a priority. So that was frustrating. I think like one thing I've kind of noticed about Pascal is that he has a lot of success when he's like when he makes like a decision quickly with the ball, like I'm gonna attack this way or whatever, rather than like facing up, looking. Because when he like faces up and he's giving the defense, the help defense, a lot of time to like figure out exactly what's going on the floor, and like he requires a ton of help defense to stop. But when he just gets the ball and goes, whether it's like pass, drive, pass, or just like drive and go up, that's when he has success because the help is usually slow when he's just like quick with it.
And he doesn't have dead ball quickness. You know, like some guys are just like fast off of a dead ball situation where they haven't used up the dribble yet and they can just like with one step kind of explode. That's not his quickness. He's not great at that. He's good when he sort of has the ball in his hand and he can like burst past somebody. Have
Yeah,
you
but he
found
has a
that?
quick first step though. He does have a quick first step. When a guy is like tied up on him,
Yeah.
he can use that step because also his strides are so long. Like I find it's surprising how like quickly he can get to the basket.
Yeah, and I think overall, like if you look at Siakam's season, the trend is still positive, right? I mean, he's like, compared to what he's been through in the early on. I think it's only good things to kind of talk about Siakam. Shot selection aside, 7 for 19 for the game, 0 for 3, 0 for 4 from three. But again, a pretty strong second half kind of colors those numbers a little differently.
No,
So,
for sure. The second half was huge for him. At the first half, it was like, oh God, what is happening with this
yeah,
guy's season? But I really think it's like still small sample size. And once we know he's a good 3-point shooter, like I'm confident in that. Last season, he showed that like on a lot of attempts. So I think once that comes back into his game, everything's going to open up a little bit and we're going to look a little bit silly because the difference of him making 2 more 3-pointers a game is he's averaging like 24 points a season, you know?
here. Somebody's asking about Fred VanVleet. Poor box score line, 2 for 10. But
Bad game, I think.
but I still felt like he is. So a couple of things that I've noticed about Fred, not just this game but overall, he is definitely much more comfortable in his mid-range game. Like
Yeah.
he's starting to use that screen on the left side, and usually he just goes back or tries to take a three, but he does like to dive in, and he's much more comfortable taking short 18 footers, and you saw a couple of those today as well. And I think that's kind of opened up his game because at the start of the season, one of the main things about Fred was that he's got to do more between the rim and the 3-point shot. And that's exactly the homework he's been doing. He doesn't have a great floater yet, but his mid-range game has definitely improved.
Yeah. And I really like that he's kind of made that a priority. And his defense was really good as usual. He had 4 steals. And that was like partly him being really good and partly Dallas's big men didn't seem really prepared for what the Raptors do on defense. Like they got stripped so many times. It was kind of shocking to see. Did you see why Carlisle got ejected, by the way?
I think he was arguing a call or something. I mean, I whizzed by it. I mean, he got a double technical, I
You got
think,
a.
didn't he? Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. How do you get a double technical for arguing a call? I didn't see it, but
He argued and then he argued again.
yeah,
I mean, I'm guessing.
yeah. I mean, Van Vliet, like the positive of his season is that he is becoming a better passer. Like he had that one really nice pass to the bounce pass to the corner 3-point
Yeah.
shooter who was, I forget who shot it right now, but that's really encouraging. But he's still, one thing that angers me about him is like he just takes these shots sometimes that's like, okay, I need to get myself going, so I'm going to take this shot. Even though like he considers himself a point guard, so he can't really have that mentality. Like he needs to have more of like a what is best for the offense right now, especially in like a tight game. But sometimes he'll just dribble down the court and like take a pull-up three because he hasn't had a good shooting night. And it's like you can tell he's trying to get himself going. And like those shots kind of kill me, even though I know he's a good 3-point shooter. It's just like you can affect the game in other ways.
Yeah, I don't see. I mean, if you have a so okay, there's a bit of a contradiction there, okay? Because with Siakam, you're cool with taking him, with him taking some, you call them open shots. Fred's shots are kind of open too, he's trying to get himself going. I have no problem with that.
No, the ones I'm talking about are not open. The ones I'm talking about are like a hand in his face,
Yeah.
and he just wants to put up a shot.
Yeah. But overall, I think if you had to give like mid-season grades to people, like at this point or whatever, 1/3 in or one quarter in,
I think like 1/7,
yeah,
1/6.
I'd say Van Vleet probably is at the and Boucher obviously are probably at the top of the grading list, followed by OG, who again had another fantastic game, man. 5 for 12. Doesn't tell the whole story. Good defense overall. Gets in the passing lanes. And again, like it's almost like these guys had off-season homework, and now they're coming and they're acing their tests. OG the same thing pretty much.
Yeah, no, I'm glad we'll talk about OG because I don't think Luka scored once on him. Like he was his primary defender, and the Raptors switched pretty much everything. So Luka did get buckets on some of the other guys, but like when it was OG defending him, he couldn't do anything. It was like he could guard him in space. Usually, and you saw this when Stanley was on him in like the third quarter, Luka can blow by guys and then make like the health defense make a decision. Like he's pretty consistent at that. But OG, he was not getting blown by, like no matter what. So yeah, really, really impressive game. And he's shooting the lights out.
Yeah, and credit on the Doncic defense also goes to Stanley Johnson, who was checking him for a considerable amount of time in the second and third quarter, especially. Like, yeah, OG started off on him, but whenever Stanley came in, he was pretty much I'd say his main defender.
Yeah, no, especially in the second half, they kind of just went to him even when OG was on the court. And like, I think that was because he was really getting in like Doncic's face and like kind of pissing him off. And like someone made this point on Twitter, and Stanley can do that because he's not worried about fouling out of games, right? He's only playing like 20 minutes a game. So he can be much more aggressive than OG can in those on-ball scenarios. But like that, yeah, it's really such a luxury. And I know like this is Stanley Johnson and we would have never said this last season, but it's such a luxury to be able to have a guy like Luka guarded by Stanley and OG for 48 minutes or however long he's going to play. Like same with LeBron or Kawhi, like to throw two great like on-ball defenders out like these superstar wings is just like such a luxury. And also the fact that like OG and Siakam can switch everything on those wings is also like when Luka and KP ran the pick and roll, they did it in the first quarter and then kind of stopped because they would just switch it, and it's like you're not getting anything from it.
And going back to like another guy who had some guy just said that Chris Boucher has been the most consistent Raptor over the last 7 games, probably longer even, I'd say.
I agree.
And the combination play between VanVleet and him is very interesting because you can see the trust growing, and VanVleet throwing passes to him. The one pass that I'm talking about is again on the left block. I think VanVleet had like a nice little bounce pass to Boucher early on when he came in for the finish. And, he wouldn't probably make that pass early on in the season. But now that you've seen that, passing to this guy is resulting in assists for him and points for everybody, he's much more comfortable there. And credit to Boucher, man. The guy, he is, like, if you look at him on the court, he is the least stationary guy on offense. He can read where the play is about to develop almost every single time. And that's why you see him in the same possession often have like a pick and roll and a pick and pop in the same possession, because he reads it so well. Like he will contest for the board, see nothing's happening, go back out. The quickness in his thinking and how he's reading what's happening on offense is like it's amazing. Like we talk about Siakam making jumps over a couple of years, getting this good. Boucher's jump from last season to this season is nothing short. It's exponential, man.
Yeah, no, I think he's like legit the most improved player, or I don't know, or sixth man of the year, but like one of those he has to be at the top of. He's really impressed me. Like, I'll take this time to publicly apologize to him because I was high on him early last season, and then it seemed like every time he was on the floor, he just made a mistake, and then Nurse pulled him because he was making mistakes, and it's his job to like not make mistakes when he's like a bench rotation, like fringe rotation player. And this season is like one thing I saw that like kind of exemplifies this is like he would never set an off ball screen unless it was like a drawn up play last season. This game, he did it like twice and it led to like open threes where like on the fly, he's just reading the game and he's just like, okay, Lowry's behind me, set a screen, the pass comes to Lowry. And it's like, and it's not drawn up stuff. This is like end of shot clock stuff. And it's like, wow, like he's reading the game so much better right now.
And he knows he's going to get it.
But
and that's the other thing. Like he knows he's going to get the ball if he's in the right position, because he's earned that trust from his teammates. And man, at the end of the day, I mean, leaving basketball aside, in any sort of team, trust is the main thing. And now that people trust Boucher, it's almost like it's like a loop. It's like they trust him more, he's moving more, he's producing more, they trust him even more, and it goes in a cycle where he gets better and better.
Yeah, no, you're right. The trust is a big one. And it's crucial that he's playing this well because like I feel like we should talk about a little bit about like Baynes. I think Baynes probably had his best game of the season, which is saying absolutely nothing, but I think it's fair to say that he did. He played 11 minutes, which is a vast improvement.
He almost picked up a
Baynes
charge until they called it back. Were you sad when they called that charge back?
I mean, at this point, I'm not really even rooting for Baynes anymore. Like, it seems pretty obvious, even though this is small sample size, it does seem obvious that if the Raptors want to like win a playoff round this year, like if that's what they're aiming to do, then you need an upgrade at center. That's my opinion. Like, because I think Boucher is perfect in this sixth man role. That's a thing. Like putting him in with the starters complicates a lot of things, but Baynes and Len also can't play with the starters. So it seems like you kind of need to bring someone in eventually. I can't hear you. I can't hear you.
On mute.
Oh, okay, I got you.
Lewis had an article today about how bad the Raptors are on defense.
Yeah,
and one of his points was that, well, part of the reason they're bad is because strategically they like to contest a lot and they flail a lot and they close out hard and that has negative effects sometimes. But in this game, you kind of saw all the positive effects of playing that way, because they're scrambling on the perimeter and like, a lot of the times, like, you saw Mavericks kind of like pump fake the Raptors into the first row, but still missed a shot. Pretty much every gamble they not every obviously, but a lot of gambles they had on the perimeter paid off today, right? So this is like a classical centerpiece on like why or how that type of defense actually works.
For sure. Like part of it is luck. The Mavericks shot 25% from three. So part of those shots were open and they just missed them. But part of it is also like their rotations are finally making sense. The guys are finally trusting each other. a little bit about trust, right? Like guys seem to trust a bit more today because, you know, they would help, and in helping they were convinced that like someone would cover for them, right? And yeah, like it was also kind of like it should have been expected that it would take some time because like the Raptors defense is like, I mean, it was why I liked watching them so much last season. It's just like insanely entertaining when it's going, but it's really aggressive and it's really like complex. It's not like just a drop coverage like the Bucks will play. Like everything, they're switching it up constantly. They're playing zones, they're hedging, they're dropping. And on top of that, they're always like the way they defended Luka today was brilliant. And they just like sold out on Luka, and they lived with like guys like, you know, Trey Burke like taking threes or Porzingis taking threes, and it worked for them.
Brunson burned him a couple times on those like wild closeouts, but I mean, you live with that as long as Doncic doesn't have like 40, right? Um, did you notice the Raptors dealing with the zone better? Because you know, a couple days back against Charlotte in the first Charlotte game, man, that was, you know, they didn't know what the hell to do when Charlotte deployed the zone. Today, much more confident moving the ball around, and going back to on the defensive side, one last point is that when defensively they break down, you notice that after the road trip, they're within each other. They talk a lot more and do a little bit of retrospective on like what happened on that play. Like they will communicate right after they get scored on to see like who is supposed to do what. You didn't see that communication happening as much early on in the season, but now you can kind of see that guys are talking to each other. Thus, the defense is actually looking better as well.
Yeah, and I think the zone thing was like Dallas did not have a good game. They're missing a lot of guys due to like injury and COVID protocol. But they did not impress me at all. If they're supposed to be like contenders in the West, I didn't see it tonight. So maybe the Hornets actually just had like a better defense. Like people make fun of the Hornets, but if you're throwing like PJ Washington and what's his name? Miles Bridges as your like 3-4, that's like great defensively. That's a really tough thing. Like, and that's why like Pascal didn't have it going. Like you can blame him, but also you have to understand those are two really switchable, strong men.
A couple of questions about like trade. I mean, I hate to talk about trades right now, man. I mean, it's I think it's so obvious that there's an imbalance on the roster that we do need a big man. I think we already talked about like you don't want to give up too much and all that. But right now, as things stand, do you see a path back for Aron Baynes into some sort of productive, like a productive part of the rotation, even if he comes off the bench?
Yeah, I think it's possible, but I think the complicated thing is that we underrated coming into the season is that it's just not easy to be a big man in Toronto system, right? Like Baines, I think, is still a productive NBA player on like 25 teams. But in Toronto's like defensive system, he's having a lot of trouble. And today was probably his best effort, so that's promising. So maybe he's just gonna like go up from here, but um I'm not sure I ever see him really figuring it out because it's complicated. Like he has to play in so many coverages and he has to contest 3-point shooters like a lot, probably a lot more than he's used to. And he's had trouble with it so far. But yeah, I think they know that, right? They'll address it by the trade line. They're also not building necessarily for this year. It's more of,
Yeah.
the
And
next couple of years.
if you look at like Baines's like sell points, like when we signed him, like it was really one main thing. And that was this guy can run the pick and roll. He's a very good screen setter and he rolls hard to the rim and he adds that dimension to our offense that we didn't think we had. But Boucher has been amazing on the pick and roll. Like you usually classified Boucher as a pick and pop guy, not as a guy who will drive hard to the rim and finish. His finishing has been excellent. His desire to hit the rim has been hard. And I think that part of Boucher's game has added like even extra pressure on Baynes to perform so he can get minutes.
Yeah, it's a good point. Like that not only Boucher has been running pick and roll, so has Siakam's been the screener a lot more this season. And then OG is also, so when Baynes is on the floor, he tends to just be a spot up guy because we just have better options to be the screener in the pick and roll. So that really limits Baynes' worth because I don't think he's hit a single three for us this season. That was also his selling point. He was supposed to be like a legit 3-point shooter, and he's not shooting at all.
Man,
right?
That three doesn't have a chance of going in. Like his
It's
threes
so ugly.
just.
It's one of the ugliest I've ever seen. But he shot it well in Phoenix.
Yeah. I don't know, man.
Right?
I don't know what it is. Did he still have his foot sticking out the way he does in Phoenix?
I think so. I think the form, stayed the same. What do you think about Davis getting minutes instead of Flynn today?
Well, I think Nurse has been pretty consistent in being unpredictable on who gets minutes past seventh man all year. The only guy that's been completely shut out has been Matt Thomas. Other than that, and also Bembry. But other than that, whether it be Flynn or Davis or Norm had another great game, we should probably talk about him a little bit. He's really been an equal opportunity employer there when it comes to those late bench spots. So not surprised at all. I mean, he's gone to Davis in the past. He's gotten to Watanabe in the past. Like Flynn got in for a couple minutes as well. So not surprised, and I like it. Honestly, I actually really like this idea of not having a completely set top 8 and actually going and figuring out what might work on a certain night. And you also get to get a good look at these players who you really don't know that much about. Like, if this is not the time to get a look at Watanabe and Flynn and see what Davis's future is, I don't know what is. So I think it's a great strategy by Nurse to kind of keep things a little unpredictable there. Keeps guys on their toes too.
Yeah, no, I half agree with you. Like, if like this is the start of the season, so you might as well do it. And also, like, none of these guys have done enough to earn a spot in the rotation. So I totally get that. But like Terrence Davis at the start of the fourth quarter picked up like 3 fouls and like helped put the Dallas in the bonus with like 8 minutes and 30 seconds left in the game. And like, that's on him. And he's been doing that defensively all season. So I'm personally done seeing him. I have enough of him personally. I'm down to give those minutes to Utah or Malachi or Thomas, but I understand what you're saying though.
Is easily, and I think I made this point a couple of times, is that he is easily, he has a tendency to pick up the worst fouls at the worst moments. Yeah. Like half of his fouls are fouling guys who are shooting threes from like, 28 feet. So yeah. I don't know what it is. Maybe he's too eager on defense, but I totally agree. His defensive awareness and where he is and how aggressive he should be playing on defense is pretty hit and miss.
I really just don't think he's a very cerebral player. Like last season, he was put in a very specific role and he did really well in it. So like credit to him for that. But this season, it's not as like cut and dry. He has to read the game at a higher level, and he's just not doing it. So yeah. I don't know if he will be able to.
And to your point much earlier is that I think Stanley Johnson is sort of doing a lot of the things that you would expect some of these other guys to do. So he's come out of nowhere and probably taken a few minutes from Matt Thomas, a few minutes from Terrence Davis, a few minutes from Malachi Flynn. He's sort of been the wild card that has made this entire rotation a little unpredictable, and all for the better, man. So and we found out about Stanley Johnson because Nurse was experimenting, right? It's not like Nurse had an idea that Stanley Johnson's gonna be my guy. He threw everybody out there, and one of them worked, and one of them has like completely owned. Like, what did he play today? 21 minutes again. So I think. Continue doing this. To your point, yeah, you can't do this like till the end of the season. Towards the playoffs, you probably got to shorten things up a little bit. But from now, at least for the next 20, 30 games, man, I'd love to see this continue.
No, that's a good point because Johnson didn't play at all, I think, the first like 4 games of the season. And then it was like, okay, we need to shake up the bench. And he's done a really good job. I really like him defending fives. Like it's so funny watching like other broadcasts every single game this season call Stanley OG at least once because they just like see one of them on the floor and assume it's OG every time. and they do have the exact same body. So that's really good. Yeah, I like him defending fives as like that backup de facto center, and then Boucher can kind of stick on fours. Like Kristaps is a good matchup for him.
Well, hey,
So
there's a suggestion in the comments which I've not heard before, so kudos for originality. Um, Starting Watanabe over Baines.
I've thought about it, and I think it's worth a try. Like you said, like the problem with that is that even if Watanabe is starting, OG is still taking centers, and I don't think you want OG to like be like battling centers for the whole game, right? Like that just takes a toll on him. But in terms of like switchability and like rebounding and defense, that makes a lot of sense.
Well, as you said, the Dallas did not have a good game. I was expecting more of them, to be honest with you. They had a couple of wins earlier on in the road trip they had, so not thoroughly impressed by them. They were missing guys, but the Raptors are back at it. They got the Heat twice, I feel, and the Heat are kind of struggling too. So a chance to really rack up some wins. They are 5-8 right now, so it's not impossible that we would see an 8-8 Raptors team 16 games in. You've gone through a bit of a roller coaster, and maybe you'll be stronger for it.
Yeah, no, like this was the first game of the season where I feel like the rotations made a lot of sense, and I just had that confidence that came with last season where it was like, okay, we have like 8 minutes left in the fourth. In like a couple of minutes, Kyle and Pascal are gonna come back in the game. Like we got this, It was just like this feeling of like, okay, like the guys are actually playing well. Like we can close this game, and that was really encouraging. For the first time this season, it was just a joy. The second half was
Yeah.
a joy to watch.
Yeah, and it was like
And
it was
yeah,
like a non like a stress-free Raptor game. Those are always welcome once in a while. You know what I mean?
like last season, it was like every game I could just depend on for happiness.
Yeah.
Even if they lost, I was just like, oh, they still played well.
Yeah.
This season has been the opposite so far. I've been like stressed leading up to games, but yeah, if they're gonna play like this, then that's as good as you can get, really. You can't ask for more. I feel like they have like the opposite problem as last season, where last season you were like, okay, like maybe the collective like fortitude can like they can be one of those teams that's like the sum is greater than their parts. And this season it's like, okay, can the top end talent like carry them,
Yeah.
because like just don't have that many guys.
Let's end off on this point. A couple of questions on Paul Watson, who we saw a little. I think pretty much everybody who's followed the 905 even a little bit knows that Paul Watson is sort of NBA ready, or at least ready for some NBA minutes to see how he fares here a little bit more consistently. How do you see those minutes coming this year, if you see them at all?
I think with him and Bembry, um, I think it's kind of you have to wait for a trade because the roster is so imbalanced. You can't really blame Nurse for not playing them, and also like Watson, I do like his game, but anyone who's like it's his first year with an NBA contract, like you can't expect him to like be deserving of minutes. Like he hasn't earned that. So you have to just be patient with these things. The Raptors have a really imbalanced roster. I'm sure they know it. I'm sure they're going to try to be aggressive at the deadline to try to deal with it. Like Powell seems like a very obvious option to kind of trade out. And then if Powell's out, there's like 25 minutes for those kind of guys, to eat up. If you can get Powell out for like just like a big man who's like on an expiring, that's kind of the dream, like a Rashawn Holmes or like a Collins. Like if you can get like one of those guys without giving up a first round pick, which is probably going to be hard to do, that's the dream.
Like he's like 25. How much waiting you got to do?
For
I mean,
who?
25. I mean, 25 is not old.
Oh,
He's just in a competitive situation, right?
yeah. It's not about the age. It's just like we know how the Raptors operate. They're just like it's a next man up mentality, and like you are that next man up by like how long you've been on the team and like what you've done on the floor in the NBA games, and like that's why Stanley Johnson got that call after a couple games. Like he's been with them for a year now in the system, right? Like Watson, he will be a piece of the rotation. It might not be this season, maybe more likely next season, but maybe just towards the end of this season after the trade deadline when the roster makes a little more sense.
Okay, let's leave it at that. Let's not overanalyze the 116-93 thumping of the Dallas Mavericks. Oren, thanks for joining, man.
Yeah, man. Thank you.